I stared at her. My father's going to say I'm overreacting. Jessica's pen paused. Mia, someone filed a complaint that could ground your aircraft. That is not a feeling. That's an action. She tapped the folder. We respond with actions. Over the next 2 days, my life narrowed into three things: documentation, security, control. Mark changed every code and deactivated every card except mine, Nadia's, and his own. He installed temporary cameras facing the hangar doors and the fuel lock. Nadia locked the schedule down like it was a vault. Every client got a reassuring email, routine compliance review, no operational impact expected. Then, on Thursday evening, I got a call from a corporate client's assistant. Her voice was overly polite. Miss Peterson, we'll be canceling our charter next week. My stomach tightened. May I ask why? A pause. We received a message from someone claiming to represent the Whitaker family. They suggested there were safety concerns and that Northshore Air was under investigation. My fingers curled around my phone. Who sent it? I'm sorry, she said quickly. I can't forward it. Yes, you can, I said, calm and firm. Because that's defamation, and it's being used to harm my company. Silence. Then, I'll speak to my manager. After I hung up, I sat perfectly still for a full 10 seconds. Because now I understood the real play. This wasn't about getting a sunrise flight. This was about punishing me for refusing. They wanted to make my no expensive. I stood up, walked into the hangar office, and found Nadia. They're calling clients, I said. Nadia's jaw tightened. Who? The Whitakers, I said, and my parents are involved, or at least aware. Nadia didn't hesitate. Okay, we go offensive or defensive? I stared at the schedule board on the wall. Flights, names, revenue, payroll. I thought about my staff trusting me to keep the business stable. I thought about my father's hand. I thought about my father's hand. I thought about Tessa not meeting my eyes. Both. I said. We stay clean with the FAA and we build the file. Nadia nodded once. Tell me what you need. I met her gaze. I need proof. Proof came from a place I didn't expect, Tessa. Late Friday night, my phone buzzed with her name. I almost didn't answer. Then I remembered the photo in the inspector's folder. Tessa in her dress beside my helicopter. Whatever this was, she was tangled in it. I picked up. Her voice was tight. Mia. I didn't soften. What do you want, Tessa? A pause, then. Mom says you're going to sue. I'm going to protect my business, I replied. She swallowed audibly. Eleanor says if you just cooperate for one short flight, all of this goes away. My blood went cold. There it was. The exchange offer. The threat disguised as a solution. Did she say that in a message? I asked. No, Tessa said quickly. She told me. Tell her to put it in writing, I said. Tessa's breath caught. Mia, don't. What? I asked. Don't gather evidence that they're extorting me? Don't protect myself? Her voice cracked. I didn't know it would get this big. I closed my eyes. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You let them decide. Silence stretched. Then she said, quieter. Dad's furious. Dad's been furious since I learned to say no, I replied. Tessa whispered. He's the one who called someone. About the FAA. My heart slammed once, hard. What do you mean? He said you needed a reminder that you're not above consequences, she said. He didn't say the words, but Mia, he bragged about it. My hand tightened around my phone. Tessa, I need you to repeat that. I can't, she said quickly, fear rising. I can't be in the middle. You already are, I said, voice low. They put you there. Then I made a decision that felt both ruthless and necessary. Tessa, I said, meet me at Baybridge tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll talk in person. She hesitated. Why? Because, I said, if you're going to tell me the truth, I want it in a place where the truth can be verified. Saturday morning, the airport was bright and cold, the sky washed clean. Tessa arrived in a black SUV and stepped out like she was walking into a courtroom. She looked smaller without her wedding gown and the Whitaker glow around her. I led her into my office in the hangar, shut the door, and gestured to the chair. She sat, hands clenched in her lap. I kept my voice steady. Tell me what you heard. Tessa's eyes flicked to the walls, then back to me. This feels like a trap. It's not a trap, I said. It's accountability. Her throat bobbed. Dad said you embarrassed him. He said you made him look weak in front of Eleanor. I nodded slowly. Andy said, if she wants to act like she doesn't need us, we'll show her what happens when people stop trusting her. Did he mention the FAA? Tessa's hands twisted together. He said he made a call. He said it like it was nothing, like calling in a favor. A familiar anger rose, but I kept my tone even. Did Eleanor know? Tessa hesitated, then nodded once. Yes. Did she approve? I asked. Tessa's voice went thin. She smiled. I stared at my sister for a long moment. Then I said softly, I'm recording this conversation. Tessa jolted. Mia, I'm not using it against you, I said. I'm using it to stop them from using you. Tessa's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in weeks she looked at me directly. What if they ruin me? She whispered. I leaned forward. They already are, just slowly so you don't notice. Tessa's shoulders shook once, and she wiped her face quickly like she hated herself for it. I didn't want to fight, she said. I didn't either, I replied. But they brought the fight to my hangar. When Tessa left, I sat alone for a minute listening to the low hum of the building. Then Nadia knocked once and stepped in. Everything okay? She asked. I looked up. We have motive. Now we need action. Nadia's eyes narrowed. Meaning they won't stop with rumors, I said. They'll try to get into the hangar. Or they'll try to plant something. Or they'll keep calling clients. Nadia's expression hardened. So we prepare. I nodded. We document everything. That afternoon, Jessica filed a formal response with the FAA, attaching evidence of the Whitaker promotional posts and a statement that the flight was never authorized, never scheduled, never operated. We also filed a report of business interference and requested preservation of records from the event account that posted the reel. By Sunday, the reel was gone. But silence isn't innocence. Sometimes it's just people deleting evidence after they realize you're not afraid to collect it. The attempt came 3 nights later. 11:47 p.m. My phone buzzed on my nightstand. Motion detected. Hangar 12. North door. I sat straight up, heart hammering. The cameras were wired to alert Mark and me. We installed them because I didn't trust the kind of people who thought consequences were something that happened to other families. I opened the live feed. 2 figures in dark clothing moved near the door, hunched against the wind. One held something metallic. Tools. The other kept looking over his shoulder like he was listening for footsteps. The camera quality wasn't perfect, but the posture was familiar. The impatient tilt of the head, the way the shoulders carried entitlement like armor. My father, Daniel Peterson. I didn't call him. I didn't warn him. I called airport security, then I called Mark. I'm on my way, Mark said immediately, voice sharp. Stay home. Not a chance, I replied, already pulling on a jacket. By the time I reached Baybridge, 2 security vehicles were rolling across the tarmac. I parked behind them and got out into the cold, my breath fogging. The hangar door was closed, but one of the keypad panels dangled at an angle like someone had tried to pry it open. A flashlight beam cut across the ground. Hands where we can see them, an officer shouted. 2 figures froze. My father straightened slowly like he'd been caught in a minor inconvenience, not an attempted break-in. The other man, a stranger, stiffened beside him. The officer approached. IDs. My father's voice carried across the open space. This is ridiculous. ID, the officer repeated, firmer. My father glanced toward the hangar, then toward the officer, and for one brief moment he looked like someone who had finally miscalculated. He reached into his pocket, produced his wallet, and handed over his license like it offended him to comply. The officer looked at the name, then looked up. Daniel Peterson, he read. Do you have authorization to be here? My father's eyes flicked toward me as I stepped into the light. He saw me and his face twisted anger first, then something else. Not guilt, not shame. Surprise. Like he still couldn't believe I'd let authority touch him. I'm her father, he said, as if that was a credential. The officer's expression didn't change. That doesn't answer the question. I walked forward until I was beside the officer. He does not have authorization. My father's jaw tightened. Mia, you're really doing this? Yes, I said, because you're really doing that. The officer turned to the stranger. And you are? The man cleared his throat. Contractor. Just helping. With what? The officer asked. My father jumped in. My daughter's being unreasonable. We were just trying to talk. I pointed at the hanging keypad panel by talking to the lock. The officer's gaze hardened. Sir, step back, both of you. My father's voice rose. This is private property. It's airport property, the officer corrected, and it's secured. Attempted forced entry is not a conversation. My father opened his mouth again, then shut it when the officer gestured toward the security vehicle. Turn around, the officer said. The cold air felt sharper. My father looked at me like I'd betrayed him. And maybe in his mind, I had. Because I'd betrayed the old rules. The ones where he could hit me, threaten me, and still expect me to protect his reputation. He was escorted to the vehicle without handcuffs, but the humiliation was its own restraint. The stranger tried to explain himself, but the officer wasn't interested. They were both questioned. Statements were taken. Photos were taken of the damaged keypad. Mark arrived, face pale, and stood beside me as the officers worked. He looked at the broken panel and then at me. You okay? I stared at the security vehicle where my father sat in the back seat, rigid and furious. I'm clear, I said. Mark exhaled slowly. Good, because this is about to get messy. I nodded. It already is. By morning, Jessica had copies of the security report and footage screenshots. By afternoon, Inspector Halverson called me. His tone was different now, less neutral, more certain. Ms. Peterson, he said, based on the materials you submitted and new information regarding attempted unauthorized access to your hangar, we're closing the complaint as unsubstantiated against Northshore Air. A weight lifted so suddenly I had to sit down. Thank you, I said, voice steady even as my hand shook. He paused. Between us, this looked like a misuse of the reporting process. I agree, I said. Keep your documentation, he added, and tighten access protocols. They're tight, I said. Now. After I hung up, Nadia leaned against my doorframe, watching my face. It's closed? She asked. It's closed, I confirmed. She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for a week. Good. Then her eyes narrowed. So what happens to them? I stared at my desk where the photo of my helicopter at the Whitaker estate still sat face down. What happens, I said, is they learn that family doesn't mean immunity. My mother called first, voice trembling with outrage dressed up as concern. Mia, your father says you had him detained, she said, like I'd personally thrown him into a cell. I reported an attempted break-in, I replied. Those are facts. He was trying to fix this, she insisted. He was trying to make peace. I laughed once, short and empty. By damaging an airport security panel? She inhaled sharply. Do you know what people will say? I stayed calm. I know what the police report says. She went silent for a beat, then tried another angle. Tessa is devastated. Tessa was devastated at her wedding, I replied. And nobody cared then. My mother's voice sharpened. You're punishing everyone. No, I said. I'm stopping you. And then I ended the call before she could twist it into something softer. The Whitakers didn't call me directly. Eleanor Whitaker sent Jessica a letter through her attorney. It wasn't an apology. It was a threat with fancy letterhead. A suggestion that I was creating unnecessary reputational harm and should refrain from escalating private family matters into public disputes. Jessica read it once and smiled without humor. She wants you to be afraid of optics, Jessica said, because she thinks optics are a weapon. I folded my hands on the desk. They're not? Jessica met my eyes. Not if you're holding evidence. 2 days later, Jessica filed for a restraining order against my father regarding the hangar and company premises. Not because I wanted drama, because I wanted distance in legal terms. Distance that couldn't be argued with at a luncheon. Distance with consequences. When the court date came, my father showed up in his best suit like he thought he could charm the judge the way he'd charmed neighbors for decades. He looked at me across the room with a stare that promised punishment later, but later never came. The judge reviewed the footage and the security report, listened to Jessica's summary, and granted the order. My father's face changed in slow disbelief. He wasn't used to losing in rooms where he couldn't raise his voice. When it was over, he walked past me without a word, his shoulders stiff. My mother followed, eyes glossy with contained rage. Tessa lingered. She looked like she wanted to speak, but didn't know which version of herself to use. The obedient daughter. The Whitaker wife. The sister. She finally whispered, I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at her, not unkindly. It always goes this far. You just don't see it when it's happening to someone else. Tessa swallowed. What do you want from me? I considered her question carefully. I want you to stop calling coercion keeping the peace, I said. And I want you to stop letting them borrow your silence. She flinched like the words stung because they were true. Then she nodded once, small and shaky, and walked away. A month passed, then another. The gossip cycle moved on new scandals, new weddings, new people to chew up. Northshore Air didn't just survive, it got stronger. The client who'd canceled because of the Whitaker message quietly rebooked after the FAA closure. A renewable energy firm signed a long-term contract after Nadia gave them a tour and explained our compliance systems. We heard you don't bend, the director told me, like it was a compliment. I took it as one. One crisp morning in October, I lifted off from Baybridge with a corporate client and the coastline unfolded beneath us like a clean line drawn between past and future. When I landed, Nadia was waiting with a tablet. Visitor, she said, nodding toward the hangar. Tessa stood just inside the doors, hands in her coat pockets, hair pulled back simply. No pearls, no entourage, just her. I approached slowly, cautious in a way I hated needing to be. She looked at the helicopter, then at me. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said. I waited. She swallowed. I left a message for Dad. I told him he can't use me as a bridge to reach you. My chest tightened slightly. And Eleanor didn't like it, she admitted, a faint, bitter laugh. She told me loyalty matters. I tilted my head. To who? Tessa's eyes flicked down, then back up. Exactly. Silence stretched between us, filled by the hangar's quiet hum. Finally, Tessa said, when you said no at the wedding, I was mad at you. I didn't respond. She continued, voice steadier. But then I watched what they did after. The calls, the complaint, the way Dad talked about teaching you, and I realized I wasn't mad you said no. Her eyes shimmered. I was mad you were brave enough to. I stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. That's not an apology, I said, but it's honest. Tessa exhaled like she'd been holding herself together with thread. I'm trying. I stepped aside and gestured toward the aircraft. If you want to understand, ask questions. Real ones. Tessa walked closer, slowly, like she was approaching something that required respect. How do you keep it all straight? She asked. The rules, the inspections, the people who think money means they can skip steps. I looked at my helicopter, my work, my freedom, my line in the sand. You keep it straight, I said, by deciding your no matters more than their disappointment. Tessa nodded, and for the first time, it looked like she understood what that actually cost. She didn't stay long. When she left, she paused at the hangar door. I don't know what happens next, she said. I kept my voice calm. Next is whatever you choose, but choose with your eyes open. Tessa gave a small nod and walked out into the cold sunlight. I stood in the hangar a moment longer, listening to the quiet I'd earned. Then, I climbed into the cockpit, ran my hand over the controls, and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not grief. Clarity. Some people try to ground you when you stop obeying. They file complaints. They start rumors. They weaponize family. But the sky doesn't care who your father is. The sky only responds to skill, discipline, and the courage to take off when you're ready. And this time, no one else was holding my map.